developer support, and paywall jumping. This is Mac Voices. Today's Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices After Dark. Uncensored, off-topic, and always off the wall. MacVoices After Dark is available as a benefit to our Patreon subscribers. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This time, the Mac Voices live panel takes on what I saw as contradictory attitudes about developer support and jumping paywalls. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking. So I'm going to stick my head in the lion's mouth because I told
I picked a good night to come back.
I told the team that I was going to bring up something that I wanted their gut level reactions to, and I did not tell them what. So here we go, and I'm. If somebody listens to only part of this, then I'm going to be in trouble, and there's going to be a lot of hate mail. And I do not want that because that's not why I'm bringing this up. This past week just let me finish, okay, before everybody jumps down my throat. Okay. This week we saw a lot of social media posts and a number of news stories about the publishers of some of the Twitter clients putting in options to their software to cancel any refunds that you were due if you had subscribed to and you were paying them that way, in order to help them, make it through to the other side, since Twitter shut down its APIs and would not allow third-party clients. And okay, that's certainly something they can ask for. And there were a number of people, saying, I've done this and you should do it too. And that's great. Everybody's going to have an opinion on that. But then over the weekend, I saw, and I am not putting a link in the show notes to this. So if you want to go and find it, you can, but I'm not putting it there. That there apparently is a way to jump over paywalls using Apple News by doing a couple very specific things to read articles behind a paywall that you're not paying for. And I saw this post retweeted, boosted, whatever a given social media's term is, by a number of people, some reputable people, and some people I happen to know that create content that are behind paywalls. And I felt like this is more than just a little bit disingenuous. This is just flat out contradictory. One place you're saying, yes, I'm donating and I'm trying to keep these people over here who really got shafted by Twitter, help them out. But the people that are trying to make a living writing behind the paywalls are, I don't mind, I hesitate to say cheat them, but I don't mind, jumping over that hurdle and at least theoretically taking some money out of somebody's pocket. And then we have the issue of ad blockers to throw into the discussion. Now, am I off base? Is this not disingenuous, or am I just missing something completely? Well, Mark's waving his hand.
Well, first I would say that the contradictory behavior doesn't surprise me. People may do things that may seem, that making them to be hypocritical. But I think, they just believe two different contradictory views at the same time or successively, so they don't rationalize and come to, by encouraging people to do this, how would I like it if I were in that, other person's position? Or maybe it's just societally, people just have a lack of empathy to really understand that, yes, they're taking money out of somebody else's income stream by urging people or teaching people how to steal the content for free. So, I think that's just the world we live in. I think if people would think about it a little bit more, I don't think they would be willing or so carte blanche willing to steal. But that's where it is. I have a dog behind me. I'm going to mute myself.
David, you're a podcast publisher. You publish your own show. Mm-hmm. I mean, does this strike you as contradictory? And you do not produce anything behind a paywall, nor do I, really. So
no. Yeah, I guess it kind of is a little contradictory, but we're also a lot of podcasters out there have been saying, hey, we got to support Tweetbot. They really got the shaft because of Twitter and cutting them off with the API, and we really should don't cancel your subscription because you want to make sure that they still are making some money while they're trying to sort things out. But on the other hand, there is a bit of a contradiction because they're not offering a service anymore unless of course if you're the option is to transfer it over to Ivory for Mastodon, but what you got a question? Okay, yeah, I want to support this developer because they're obviously going to be striving for some better things, but also, do you really want to do that, or maybe hold off for a while and then maybe redonate later? But the worry obviously was it could bankrupt them, and I rightfully understand that that's the case. But it is a bit contradictory. I do think.
Well, and I want to, Kelly, I'll let you in a second. I want to be real clear here that this is not a comment against any of those developers who put that option.
Not at all.
Not
I
even a little.
Support them. I'm supporting them now with Ivory. So.
Right. So, and that, first of all, even if I did object to it, it's their decision to put in. I don't have to click that button. But absolutely, I completely get it. And, and I support that idea. But just the rest of it just shakes me. Kelly, you're
okay.
Go ahead, David.
One more point. I'm sorry, Kelly. The other thing too is you have to make sure to know that Apple does require subscriptions to be renewed and canceled at any time, and that's where the issue was. Is that then Apple's already making them notify. Okay, you have the option. Do you want to cancel the subscription or not? So,
I think actually that's not the case. I put a link in to Michael Tsai's blog about this from a few days ago. And he raised some interesting questions that I haven't seen addressed anywhere else. And I haven't seen anybody answer what his questions are, including on the comments on that blog. Because it sounds like this is something that Apple must have initiated.
I was under the impression that it was an automatic thing. Like now that the app is no longer available, if you had a subscription as of this point in time, then it's going to get refunded to you automatically because that's SOP for an app with a subscription option that's no longer available in the store. That was what I had understood from that, which could be wrong, but I thought that's what I read.
That's what I understood too.
There must be more to it than that because those apps are at least now available in the store. Because what people are saying is if you've deleted it, go download it again. And they've been updated with this option to not cancel. And everything, what I've seen is that everybody is going to get a refund unless you download and take a proactive thing. So if somebody doesn't hear about this, they're going to get a refund that they may not have even known that they were going to get.
And that's the thing I think about it is that like the app is no longer available. I think Apple gave them this option because somebody could have just subscribed. And so at some point, those subscriptions are going to time out. And so I think they're just leaving the app, even though it doesn't work. Like you can't go buy a new subscription in Twitterific or in Tweetbot. You can't go set up a new one if that's a thing that you want to do. So I think it's just so that people have a way to manage that subscription if they want to. And a lot of people did not care, did not want that refund. And I think part of the reason that this got the attention that it got is because at least initially when Twitter put the skids to all of these third-party apps, both Tapbots and Icon Factory came out and said, like, if this is really what's going to happen, because remember at the beginning, it was like 2 weeks before they actually found out this was official. If this is really what's happening, this could be an extinction level event for us as a company. was what I remember seeing more than once. So I think giving people the option now, all of the people who are going around all self-righteous about it and think that this gives them the option to judge other people, whether they do or do not, like, this is between you and your Touch ID, right? Like, this is not a thing that anybody else needs to know anything about. So everybody sticking the little badge on their chest so that, they've got so that they're, saved you from an edit, Chuck, so that they are the star-bellied Sneetches. That's a completely different bunch of nonsense that I don't need to, that's another podcast, is what I'm saying. But I think both can be true, Chuck. And the reason I think that is because I think, and I don't remember seeing the Apple News thing, but I'm guessing it was like, so that you can read the New York Times for free, or you can read the Washington Post for free. And if every single person who read that post went and did that, those are probably not people who were subscribers and just, or could be subscribers. Like, these are people who are never going to pay for the Washington Post in the first place. So if they're going to extraordinary lengths in order to do this and read these things for free, like, the Washington Post isn't going to end up extinct as a result of that. And yet Icon Factory or Tapbots might have ended up in a very, very, very precarious position if this were to happen. Now, I did see people who had backlash about it, about the, if you want to go cancel, make sure that they get to keep your whole subscription. And, in the grand scheme of things, it's not much. So, the people who are worked up about it, you're going to get $6 back or something. Like, we've gone up and down subscriptions here. I know that, we've talked about them regularly. And, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. For most people, it's going to be, not even the amount that you paid for lunch yesterday or whatever. And so, because it makes a much larger difference to Icon Factory to keep my money, I'm good with that. It's fine with me. I remember going back and discovering I had an old version of Tweetbot on my phone that would let me use the tip jar because it was the pre-subscription version. So I would go, so I went and gave them $10 or whatever it was it said on the tip jar because it sounded like fun. And it just seemed like a nice thing to do since I couldn't pay for Ivory. So, in those cases, it was sort of, solidarity and people understanding because these guys have all been upfront about this is what's happening and this is why it's bad or this is why it's good, and have come back and said, the fact that all of these people have refused the refund for this subscription, which would otherwise be automatic, means that we have options now that we may not have had otherwise. And that part I think is nice. There's the Washington Post is not a scrappy upstart news organization. And if I read an article from them for free once in a while, I don't really think it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's going to make a lot of difference. So I understand what you're saying, but I think that's where the both can be true is coming from, because it's nuance. And as we all know, the internet is allergic to nuance.
Webb, I really want to hear from you because you made a statement a couple shows ago. Maybe it was last time. I've kind of lost track about that we want folks to be successful. We just don't want them to be too successful. And I felt like that sort of played in here a little bit because, like Kelly says, the Washington Post, it's they've got a lot of resources, they've got a lot of assets. They're still paying the bills. They're still paying somebody to write the articles that are behind that paywall. And so that, I think David was the one that started out and said, that, or Mark was, that they can both be true. That it's okay to do or feel this way about either one of them. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I did the subscription refund back to Twitterific on Tapbots because for the thing that Kelly said is that I didn't want them to be annihilated or get buried in this debt that they're going to have to come up with all of a sudden. So that's the first thing. I supported the move and did it. I can't tell you the exact circumstance, but I was reading something. I clicked the link. It took me to the Washington Post, and Washington Post let me read about 3 paragraphs. Then they put up you want to read any more, you got to subscribe. I just moved on. Okay. I respect the Washington Post that they do have a paywall, and they do have bills that they got to pay, and they have writers they have to pay. And we can get into a big argument about what happened to journalism these days, but that's another topic for another time. The paywalls, I don't try to circumvent around them. I either accept it or I move on, and that's just it. You're right. The comment that I made was when we take somebody who we've put on some sort of a throne because they've gotten successful, we really encourage them to on their way up. Then once they get there, then we hate them for being successful. And I think that's just some of the hypocrisy that goes on in this world that just drives me nuts.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes me feel a little bit better, that you would see it that way, because I guess maybe just hypocrisy is the norm. Eric, no, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Well, I guess I don't quite understand how you're connecting these two things. I mean, basically, this has sort of been like a GoFundMe campaign for these two companies, and people are essentially suggesting that people should donate to them. I mean, that's what this is, right? So what does that have to do with going beyond paywalls? It seems like separate issues.
So I have a perspective on that, and Chuck, I may be putting words in your mouth, but this is the vibe that I got from you. So, oh crap! Hold on. Stupid being sick.
Take some more antibiotics.
Buffering.
Right. It's about giving the companies what they are owed and what they deserve. And in the case of Tapbots and Icon Factory, it's the money that they should have for creating and maintaining these apps. And for news organizations with paywalls, it's about giving them the money that they are owed for creating the content. That's the vibe that I got.
Maybe I need to explain myself a little bit, because Jim asks a very fair question. I think that it was almost, boy, this is really dangerous. I told you, I'm putting my head in the lion's mouth. It's almost the self-righteousness with which both sides, both events, both situations presented themselves. And this is purely idiosyncratic, because just the posts I was seeing on Mastodon and Twitter, were very much pro developer, which I agree with, because it should also be noted that money that is going to the refunds is not coming out of Apple's pockets. That's coming out of the developers' pockets. That it's going back. So it did have the potential to, as Kelly said, have an extinction level event for them. But just then the happiness that, hey, I can use Apple News and I can hop paywalls and read articles, and it's like, okay. I almost felt like if you're going to do it, just do it quietly and don't publicize it. If you're going to break the speed limit, go ahead and break the speed limit. But are you going to really get on social media and brag about it?
Apparently, yes.
Yes.
Okay, well,
sure. Some people will.
Chuck, have you been on the internet?
Have you seen the things that people record and put online where they're committing serious crimes, and then they're shocked, absolutely shocked, when the police show up at their door and arrest them?
Good point. Good point. This edition of MacVoices is supported by our Patreon subscribers and MacVoices After Dark. Ever wonder what happens before the MacVoices live shows? Or what happens when the show ends or after the live feed closes? That's where MacVoices After Dark comes in. If you are a Patreon supporter at any level, you get access to the video of our off-camera conversations. Uncensored, unedited, and always off the wall. It's a small thank you to our Patreon supporters who want to peek behind the curtain. Become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/MacVoices. And thanks to everyone who supports the show. Eric, I interrupted you. I wanted you to felt like you had something to add to this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would like to see more discussion kind of alternate options. You know, like the New York Times, if you subscribe to them, they give you the ability to send out a few links a month where it doesn't go through the paywall. Anyone can click on the URL and read the article. Mm-hmm. To me, that is kind of a good way around the problem. I want to send somebody an article so that they can read it. I shouldn't expect that they pay for the New York Times to see the content. It's supported because it's offered by the New York Times as an option. I like that. There's software that lets you take a link to YouTube videos and download it to disk.
Use it all the time.
It works really well. A lot of people use it for if you're going to do a presentation, because you can't rely on having a good bandwidth in a conference room. So you download it and you have a copy. Well, the downloaded copy doesn't have any ads. It's just the video. So tracking of how many times you watch it and all that kind of isn't available. There are, however, oftentimes the option to support the content provider separately. Or for conferences where you can, pay for a conference and then download the content. So there's kind of a trade-off. It's not 100%. You probably shouldn't be distributing the content, but there's at least a way to kind of compensate and encourage whoever's producing the content to continue to produce it. I would like to see a lot more discussion of how whatever it is the content producer is doing lets them continue to produce the content and why you want to support them, as opposed to how do you work around it because you don't want to have to pay for it. There are lots of reasons why it might come up. The other reason to download YouTube videos with another app is your home network connection is just too darn slow. So you download the stuff on a work connection or a library connection. You go home and then you can watch it on your TV or whatever, and you don't have to wait for the stuttering of the video to go across your really slow DSL connection. Again, if there's a way to send money to the content producer, help them out, subscribe separately, it would be nice to see that mentioned. If somebody gives a tip saying, oh, hey, here's a way you can bypass something, then turn around and also talk about, well, you can also subscribe to the content producer directly, or maybe you don't want to just download it because you want that content going forward.
Brett in the chat room says, and I think this is a really good point, he thinks the Mastodon posts urging users to forego their Twitterific tweetbot refunds are coming from people who know those developers personally. Or Brett,
I think so.
I might add that, or at least they feel they know them because they are very visible in the community. The posts about paywall jumping are coming from people who have no idea who the people who put up the paywall are. It's not a personal relationship. Fair point.
That's an interesting thought.
I think that's totally correct.
That's very good. David?
Yeah, one thing I want to make mention of YouTube too is you're worried about downloading those videos and not paying the advertisers. Well, I'm a YouTube Premium subscriber, so I'm paying for them not to advertise to me, and that means YouTube is making their money by me paying that every month. So I don't feel so bad that I'm downloading videos when I have to. But
isn't that a feature of YouTube Premium?
No, you still can't do it.
I thought download. Really?
No, I use a third party downloader to get it, but I'm in a position like that was a perfect example. I work in the business world. I tell them all the time, if you're going to play YouTube videos in a PowerPoint presentation and you're going to go to a hotel and present, please don't use the link. It's never going to work right, and it happens every time. And they don't listen, and I'm like, okay. But you really have to download it. It's a video you really need to have as a point for the presentation. Just download it.
I think part of the issue because Eric, you hit on this with talking about supporting creators independently. People who how does someone continue to lead the lifestyle to which they have become accustomed, right? So I think part of the problem is that if you are putting videos on YouTube and monetizing on YouTube, that's putting all your eggs in one basket. And if you have, I think that's where things like Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee and those sorts of things become more relevant, is because if you can divorce the supporting of the content with the platform of the content, which of course Google doesn't ever want you to do, then that's going to be the thing I think that really is going to make it possible for more people to have that ability, as opposed to, the few, right? Because they are the people who have either figured out how the algorithm works or found somebody who they can pay enough money to explain to them how the algorithm works, so that they're getting their videos out to the people that want them and be able to support themselves strictly within that platform. And I think that's the difference here, because this is the same sort of thing as like when the record company and the record distributor were different things. A business relationship with a record company was very, very different. And then they brought all the manufacturing in-house, and now you have a one-stop shop, and that's supposed to be more convenient, but really it's just another way for the record company to put the screws to you. So that's, I think it's something along those lines. Like, it's not fully formed yet because I've still got a bunch of like neural pathways burning through here. But what you said is the part of that hits on it for me, because like if YouTube decides that you can't that you can't monetize there anymore, then what are your options, right? So I think that's part of what makes that a very interesting proposition, is finding people who are able to support themselves outside. Like, I publish videos on YouTube, but really you should get them from my website, or, through the Patreon subscription, or I know there's another one that I'm not thinking of right now that does the same sort of thing as Patreon that I'm not remembering, but things like that.
Buy Me a Coffee.
Like if there's a, well, Buy Me a Coffee. And I know there's one more that I'm missing.
KOFI Coffee.
Yeah, so that's probably it. So I think if enough people are able to drive subscriptions to something like that, where the point of their videos is not on YouTube, is not letting YouTube monetize them, I think that's a very different proposition. And that's going to be the point where I think things are going to get really interesting for YouTube as a result, because, that's a thing that they can hold over people. And when it becomes less important that my YouTube monetization is doing what I want my YouTube monetization to do, when I'm relying on the other stuff, I think that's going to be a very different experience for everybody. And the playing field will get a lot more level.
The point about eggs all in one basket, that's totally on point to this Twitterific and Tapbots thing, because they had all their eggs in two baskets. They had their eggs, Twitter, because, what's this whole thing here? Twitter decided, oh, you're out of business. Mm-hmm. And also anybody in the App Store, you're in that basket. At any point, Apple can decide that you're out of business. And they do that. And actually, I think that applies here because, I'm pretty sure it's Apple that decided that, these people are all going to get refunds. And, that also was part of this Michael Tsai thing, was how did all that happen? For example, this mechanism where they're like, okay, you can request, no refund. Well, Apple's giving the refund So what API, this has never happened before. How, what mechanism was set up so that the app can tell Apple, don't give these people a refund? There must be some behind the scenes thing that went on between these developers and Apple, because this has never happened before, as far as, I can see, or Michael Tsai can see.
Could this just be the biggest example of apps that were subscription apps that went away? I mean, I feel like this can't be the first time this happened, which is why the App Store has this policy, right?
Yeah, and wasn't there something somewhere that you could, that you had to have good reasons, and I don't know what those good reasons were, but that if you subscribed, that you could request a refund on a subscription? Mm-hmm. Or am I making that up?
You can. This is the opposite. You're requesting through the app not to get a subscription, which means somehow the app is calling an API, which is not publicly documented, and Apple's going like, "Oh, okay, uncancel this," and keep it going. So it seems like Apple must have set something up just for this. Another question he's asking is, how does the developer pay for the refund? Like, does Apple have access to their bank account? And because that's the whole point, is that Apple's already given them the money, and now I guess Apple is going to reverse that. And and what if they had emptied out their bank account and set up a different bank account so Apple couldn't get to it, or whatever? I don't know. Maybe then Apple would cancel their developer agreement or something if they didn't give the money back, or But there's a lot of questions about the mechanics about this that I think are kind of interesting, because this has never come up before.
Well, Jim, I'm not sure. I'm going right through my hat here, but I would think that there might be at least some money held in escrow, that and somebody here that has more knowledge about the App Store, please correct me.
Well, Apple doesn't hold on to your money for a year.
No, but
that's what they're saying. These are annual subscriptions,
right?
Okay, so let's say somebody, they paid $10 for a year, and after like 45 days, Apple gives 70% of that or 85% of that to the developer. Okay, so Apple doesn't hold on to it for a year; they give it to the developer, and that's the whole point. Is the developer already has this money, and now Apple is saying, "Oh, nope, customer's got to get a refund." So that money's got to come back from the developer. It's already gone to the developer, and that's why they might go bankrupt, because they've got this income that they've already booked. It's already landed in their bank account, and now they've got to give it back. And it could be like average out to, depending on when people renew it, it could be like 6 months of income that they suddenly have to work back to Apple. And who has 6 months of income sitting around?
Well, I guess that's what I meant, though, Jim. To take your example, if you pay $10 to subscribe to my app, what is it? Then I get $7. But the point is that, how quickly do I get that $10? Do I get it within a week, a month, or do I get it dribbled out over time because it's a subscription that I've paid for over time? I mean, I would think from a business perspective,
for an annual prescription, I think you get it like within like 45 days after the customer pays. So it depends on if is the customer paying monthly or annually. If it's annually, I don't think Apple doesn't drib that out. Like,
I'm pretty sure they just give it to the developer as the lump sum that the consumer paid.
Okay.
Minus 30%.
Or 15%.
Or 15%.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's going to be a little bit of a buffer time period there where the money is still in Apple's hands. And so that would be available to fund refunds.
Right. But let's say all the customers, bunch of customers re-upped annually in December. So, they paid through next December. Now, so they've already gotten the money because they probably got it in February. And then now, March, Twitter is like, oop. So now Apple is saying, oh, well, you're no longer providing a service to this customer for the next 9 months. So you've got to, we're going to refund the remaining 9 months. So to the customer. So, give us, 9 months worth of that $7 or $8.50 or whatever it is, we've got to give it back. So you've got to give it back to us. So that could be a large chunk. And then that's sort of what, this sort of appeal was sort of like, hey, because Elon Musk is a dick, these developers are, going to have to pony up this huge amount of money, which is really your money because you're, but why don't you just, donate it because, it's not going to be that much to you, but it could be huge to them. And, so that's sort of the pitch of that was on these appeals that went out on Mastodon was, don't make these developers give back the next 9 months of their, or whatever, depending. I mean, if you subscribed in August, then, it's not going to be that much. It's going to vary for, but presumably they have subscriptions all through the year. So the average is probably 6 months of a refund. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, some of this is pure speculation because we don't know exactly how exactly it works. Yes, this issue deserves a lot more conversation, and it gets it in the next edition of Mac Voices. The panel is back to continue our conversation about what Apple is doing to help support the developers whose products were basically eliminated when Twitter changed their policies. That's next time on Mac Voices. We'll see you then. As always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.